Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, Jack Hart returns to the show. Jack is one of the leading esoteric researchers in the alternative research community today. His writings turn mainstream science on its head as he reveals the mass deception taking place by the scientific and academic gatekeeper community. In today's discussion, Jack will take us through the premise of his three-part article entitled Peter Pan Meets Pyramid Head, where he explains the theory that humanity resides within an alternate reality, similar to a game simulation gone awry, and how this program reality has its foundation in the work of John von Neumann, who was a brilliant mathematician, physicist, and computer scientist, and is acknowledged as the inventor of game theory. And so without further ado, here's Jack Hart. Hey Jack, welcome back to the show. The last time you were on was, believe it or not, was back in January. We did the Holographic Universe show. It was very well received. I received a lot of very positive feedback. Your research goes very deep. And with this show, we're going to pick it up based upon three articles that you have written entitled Peter Pan Meets Pyramid Head, Part 1, 2, and 3. And that's gotten a lot of views, I know, on your blog, on VT, and it's making its way around the internet. But before we get started, because I think that this quote by Chris Hedges is going to be very indicative of what we're going to talk about. And here's the quote. We now live in a nation where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the press destroys information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. So I know that you and I have spoken offline on many occasions, and the consensus that both of us have come to is that this reality or this existence, whatever it is we want to call it, this realm, it's something very, very wrong, very, very upside down about it.
Right, it's like that Star Trek movie, Michael. Remember where Captain Kirk goes into the anti-universe where
Yes.
There's the evil Spock and the evil Kirk. It's almost like that with people. These people, we know them. We've shared our life experiences with them, but there's something different about them. We don't connect with them like we used to with our own families. I've analyzed every position to it. You can see, obviously, when you go to explain something to one of these people, for instance, like that 17 Arabs didn't learn how to fly like the Blue Angels from flying crop duster simulators, and they didn't split the defenses of NORAD and take out half of Lower Manhattan and part of the Pentagon, the most secure building in the world. It's impossible, They can't seem to understand any of this stuff, It just goes on and on. No matter what you do, it doesn't get through to them. And no matter how many facts you present to them, it doesn't get through to them either. It's like we're running in a program.
Yeah.
It's that nightmare where you're trying to shout out and you can't wake up and nobody can hear you.
Yeah, like sleep paralysis.
Right. It's like being in sleep paralysis, which is my whole point. It is my belief, as Preston Nichols is writing about in the Montauk Project, we're in an electromagnetic bottle. This is what my whole series has been about, Peter Pan Meets Pyramid Head. It's been my bacteria thing, that was heavily attacked. It was cyber attacked from all over. But compared to what's been done with the Peter Pan Meets Pyramid Head, that was nothing. Nothing at all. But I guess the joke's on them because now it's going in the next edition of Nexus magazine.
So what's been happening, Jack? They've been squashing the views.
Oh, yeah, they've frozen the views. There's actually on part 2 on Veterans Today, the editors, before the article, there's a paragraph talking about how the views have been frozen on it. And it was knocked down 3 times, and I believe it was knocked down 3 times because it ran those articles. They can't even put them in the top 50. Nexus also got knocked down, Nexus magazine, when they ran those things. They got knocked down for a week.
So what do you think they're afraid of? And why are they taking it down? What is it that's in Peter Pan Meets Pyramid Head that's making them very concerned?
There's a number of things, Michael. First off, that this is a simulated reality. Those of us who are cognizant, I have tremendous news for you. This is probably not your only physical body. And if it's not a physical body, it's your essence, your true existence is elsewhere. You're participating in a program that's being run. And this technology has been developed. The Germans started with it, with the experiments of Passion and Wien. It was carried through when guys like Schlick, who I believe now was my friend's grandfather, who I wrote about. That's him. I've seen him in the picture. Von Neumann was brought over here. The sciences were shared with the Soviet Union. I mean, von Harden went to the Soviet. He wouldn't have nothing to do with America. He went there. The elite have been sharing this technology since at least the start of this century. The 20th century is what I meant. I think it ties in with the Vatican and Aleister Crowley's declaration of a new aeon in 1905. I mean, he predicted World War II. And he predicted the depravement or the abase. He called it abase. The 80s would be abased. And that's Hollywood has followed that agenda to the letter. All media outlets. And the educational systems, too. I mean, I think they began handing out prophylactics at the beginning of the 80s.
The whole thing, the whole society, the culture is very perverse. It's very decadent.
But it's being run like a program. You can trace the science, and that's what I did. They have their new series now with their little Einstein series, Nat Geo, of all people. Nat Geo should have been closed down. They've countered with this nonsense about Einstein, the brilliant scientist he is. Read our posts. I was very fair to him. I gave his science a lot of credit with the black hole thing. That's all Einsteinian science. And it is blended together with quantum physics. It's not what they're using. It's not cutting-edge science. I have papers that I printed in, I think it was Return of the Titans. If you go, I think it's link 11. You'll see it's a link to all these cutting-edge theories, on unified field theories. Almost every one of them, and there's like 100 of them on there, start off with a reputation of the theory of relativity. Why are they making a hero out of them? What I did with the Peter Pan meets Pyramid Head is we brought out who John von Neumann was. Because John von Neumann is the guy who invented the 21st century. The Jews aren't happy they want Einstein. I'm sorry. Von Neumann was a Jew too, so maybe they'll be happier to know that. But he happened to have also been a Nazi, okay? And when they brought him over there, they gave him an office next to Einstein at Princeton, and he used to blast. He had the gramophones then, and he'd turn up the volume full blast, and he'd blast the Prussian marching music at Einstein. So Einstein, he had to complain to the authorities at Yale, who still couldn't do anything, because von Neumann was the golden boy. The Rockefeller Foundation paid a lot of money for von Neumann to come over here, and for him to be educated by Hilper in Germany before he did. Einstein is not an important scientist. He really isn't. I hate to tell people, too, and I've gotten into this before with our New Age friends and stuff. You read our writings for the last 4 years, and you will see document upon documentation of a technology I'm telling you about that allows them to switch channels. It culminated with stealth technology. I mean, Wikipedia's got all this stuff documented. These are actual events, okay? Let's talk about John von Neumann, who invented everything you see before you in the 21st century. If you don't believe me, go read his Wikipedia links. And I got another newscast for everybody, or a hot news bulletin. Everything they go by now is game theory. The politicians run nobody. They don't make any decisions. The intelligence agencies make those decisions. And they make them on game theory. Von Neumann invented game theory in 1928. It's almost as if, not almost, that we're in a program. He invented a self-replicating computer in 1949 with a piece of graph paper and a frickin' pencil. All for that DNA science was discovered 2 years later. They had to be using his blueprints for the DNA runs like a program would for the replicating computer. I don't think that's coincidental.
So what we're saying here is that Einstein pretty much is a ruse.
A total ruse. Anybody who's ever had a premonition knows that things can travel faster than light. Quantum entanglement proves there's no speed limit, and Bell's theorem proves it mathematically. What I did in Peter Pan meets Pyramid Head is I culminated it and I connected the dots. I know there's people in the intelligence services that read me because that's who most of my internet friends are. They've been connecting the dots. But I connected it for the general audience, which elicited a violent response, maybe even. Because believe me, I never wanted to do this. I know you're probably in the same boat.
No, I'd rather be doing other things.
Oh, my God. What am I doing? And I'm not freezing my views, Michael. You know, that's they're taking money right out of your pocket when they do shit like that. That's your resume, you know?
Yeah.
So what am I doing this for?
Well, you've rattled some cages. So that's a good question. So you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? So what do you think happens in the end? Why are you doing it?
I told you, we're like salmon, so I don't know. Don't go extra salmon like swimming upstream, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, why do salmon? swim upstream. I don't know. They just do, right?
Right? And by the time they get there, they'll beat the shit. So that's for me. That's the way I feel, like a salmon, maybe.
All right. So the thing is now, they frozen the view or the counts on your piece. And we're talking about, again, Peter Pan meets Pyramid Head.
Yeah, well, they started doing that. They did it on the bacteria piece too, part
Yeah,
two.
but it got really bad with the last release.
I always suspected it. I know you and I talk about it, and everybody who runs an internet site, I think.
Yeah, I've had it happen to me on my YouTube channel. Okay, so we have, Einstein, and a lot more information is coming out now about Einstein not being who they claim he was.
Right, you've run stuff yourself on your site, yeah. Because of him, you had the Einstein-Podolsky Bridge, which supposedly had a singularity in the middle of it that would rend anything that tried to go through it. Their proper finish, you have a transversible wormhole, which is what they're using to violate the ports right now. They've been using science for years, We have no rocket ships, but we certainly have secret space. I hesitate to call it space.
Let's put it this way. There's no space program as they have defined it to the public.
We have an interdimensional program, okay? That's what we have. And we've had it. They've had it maybe since the beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah, so they have this technology that they have had for a very long time.
Right, that's another thing I go into. The Germans had it by 1922 with Schumann. The only reason people have ever heard of Schumann, Winifred Otto Schumann, is because they had to name the Schumann resonance after him, I guess, because he discovered he's the one that was using it.
Right.
By 1922, they had put him to work on building what they called an afterlife flying machine. I'm not saying it in German. He got sequestered for the longest out of any of the German scientists that I know, and I researched this probably better than anybody. They had him for 2 years at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Well, he was he was the biggest prize maybe they had,
You're talking about Schumann?
Yes.
Okay.
W.O. Schumann, right. He went along with, I don't know how many tons I listed of classified German aeronautic papers. They all went to Wright-Patterson, or underneath Wright-Patterson is more likely. Although that technology didn't come out in America until after the AEC went beneath Ordorf, blew up the entrances, and came back here to Long Island, and they gave them Camp Upton, and they started burrowing along with Betchel. Betchel is their trained burrower, I think.
When I was reading your articles, the thing that stuck with me was I really had to come to grips with the fact that the types of technologies that they were working on, I could not believe how advanced these technologies were.
You don't understand. We're millenniums ahead of what you're talking about. They're like using technology that they learned from Morgan Freeman, which is, it's increased their work week 20 hours. It's really impressive, And you look old by the time you're 40, too, using that song. It's great. And we're dependent on one giant corporation to produce all our food now, Monsanto. I trust them to feed me, don't you, Michael?
Well, that's the thing, right? So what they've done is they've put this whole facade out there, which includes science.
Yeah, that's the new freaking Catholic religion. They still have Inquisition. Well, they do on the Internet.
Well, and they're giving them diplomas, and they're giving them certificates, and they're giving them PhDs, and they're calling them scientists. But they're working on stuff that it's wheel spinning.
It doesn't do anything. Oh, you want to talk about television and wireless? The Germans invented all that in World War II, Von Orden and all the rest of them. The guy that came over and invented holograms, Gabor. That's another guy I trace. He's von Neumann's homeboy from Hungary, a German Jewish or Hungarian Jewish aristocrats in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They came over. They had to have been together. And then you got the science, which came out. They created holograms out of now. Oh, and that will be the next step on your phone, too. You're going to have a holographic iPhone next,
But the foundation of the real science, the science that's being used today, the science that you believe has created this virtual reality.
Based on frequency, Michael. They can turn a frequency into, not an image. There are no objects. Frequencies are objects. And they've figured out the secret of the human brain. That's what collapses the wave. That's another thing von Neumann said in 1933. The human mind collapses the wave function. And then later on, Everett III came out and wrote his paper about the universal wave function and how it doesn't collapse,
So the real science is John von Neumann.
Yes.
He's the foundation of the real science that's taking place.
Reasons why they don't want nobody to notice. You know why? Because it would empower people. If you collapse the wave function, that's a fancy way of me saying you create your own reality.
But it makes sense because that's why they spend all of their time trying to manipulate your thoughts and your consciousness.
Right. This can be weaponized and used to get rid of them, to overthrow them.
Yeah.
And this is what they're afraid of, because there's people out there that are better at it than them. They use a lot of machinery and stuff. There's people who are... That's what we're going to go into in part 4 of this, by the way. This is what this is all about. And I think they know better. But anyway, we're going to go into that, and then we're going to go into what Silent Hill is really about and what PT is about, or, the genetics are behind all this.
So this is going to be part 4?
Yes.
Okay. I picked up on something a couple of days ago, and we were talking about how some of these TV shows you mentioned before, Star Trek, all of this took place in the 1960s.
Well, Star Trek is the Rand Corporation. That was their their bulletin board. Yeah. You know what it was, Michael? It was like their PowerPoint presentation to the powers that be of what we can have. Look here, look, we can do this,
Yeah. Well, back in the 1960s, DC Comics had come out with Bizarro World, right? So Bizarro World was the opposite of a world that's organized, a world that has compassion, a world that has law and order, as an example.
Yeah, well, that's what we live in now, Bizarro World.
We live in Bizarro World, right. So
sure.
I want to read something here. This is off of Wikipedia, folks, so I'm not making this up. In the Bizarro World, society is ruled by the Bizarro Code, which states, us do opposite of all earthly things, us hate beauty, us love ugliness, is big crime to make anything perfect on Bizarro World.
It sounds like Hollywood has wrote a manifesto.
But that's the thing. It's written with a lot of ignorance because, in my view, what's happening is they're really telegraphing out to the population, this is where it's going.
Yes, it is being telegraphed. Like I'm doing your show, and I know you have a lot of very enlightened listeners. And you guys can't read the writing. This is a message. It's all a message.
Well, that's the thing. I'm thinking that a lot of this really, really got started hot and heavy in the 1960s because Bizarro World, 1960s DC Comics.
In the 60s, the music started to change things. It opened Pandora's box.
Now, look, the other show that I wanted to bring up, and this was also in the 1960s, was Lost in Space, and the name of the show was The Antimatter Man. And it was all about duality, and it was all about good versus bad.
Everything Star Trek did, Lost in Space did better. They had the kids in it. Maybe it's not taken as seriously by science fiction aficionados. First of all, Lost in Space represents Shlomo, Dr. Smith. You can't make a microcosm of the human race. They had in Star Trek. They had the Russians, the black girl, the Chinese guy. They didn't have Shlomo. How can you have a fucking human race without no Shlomo? In Lost in Space, they cover Shlomo. Dr. Smith is Shlomo, and he's perfect at it. They have there's a Lost in Space episode, which I think is like one of the deepest things TV shows they ever made, about when they get marooned on a planet and they meet up with a golden man, the family. And this golden man is like glittering, and everything he says is perfect about what he's going to do for them and promises he's taking. And he tells them that this lizard man is really cranky lizard man. He's got these crazy weapons and shit, and he's going to kill everybody. And this is his dreaded enemy, the lizard man. And through the whole thing, he's juicing them on, that they have to fight the lizard man, And in the end, it ends up that he was conspiring to like he was going to eat them or something, And the lizard man had to come and rescue them.
The other show I wanted to talk about was, you mentioned it, Star Trek, and the episode was called Mirror, Mirror. And that's the one you were talking about where there was a parallel universe or dimension that was evil.
Right, with the evil Spock. Yeah, Leonard Nimoy was great in that one. The evil Spock was his best freaking acting role.
So my point being is that was in 1967, I believe. So we have Bizarro World in the 60s in DC Comics. We have the episode with Lost in Space.
We have the comics in general, too. I mean, the comics introduced Marvel heroes and, X-Men and all this other stuff, Mutations, and we're going to be talking about mutations.
But the reason why I'm bringing all this up, Jack, is because they're setting the stage. They're actually, like I mentioned before, they're telegraphing this to the population, to the people. And what they're doing is, I think it's almost kind of like tongue-in-cheek. It's a little bit of a duper's delight, if you will, where they're telling you, these are the technologies, these are the the worlds or the dimensions that they're able to play with and page in and out of, you think it's science fiction, but science fiction is actually their science, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I got, you know why they do that, Michael? And this is a theory, but it's a theory based on something I saw when I was a kid, or when I graduated high school and I was going to college. But I'll tell the story. Okay, you know, I was hanging out and I had these friends from the North Shore, and they were like, we all used to party together, and you know, they had all the college parties between Stony Brook and the community college, and I was big into that scene, and this kid was like, he was selling like a lot of the Hawaiian pot and stuff like that. They had the crazy stuff, and he was like a big socialite. He introduced me to this guy who was staying over his apartment. They had an apartment, like 3 or 4 people had it. But this guy was hiding, and he was a prodigy student. You know, he had invented a working nuclear reactor. I talked to this guy for 2 days. He was in all these advanced classes. And when they took him out of high school, they took him into Stony Brook. And they took him down to the Brookhaven lab. And
this is Stony Brook University on Long Island?
Right, Stony Brook University. And they took him to the Brookhaven lab. And they showed him things, and they said, forget everything you ever learned about, physics. This is what real physics are. And they were making things disappear in chambers. And, you know, this guy got so spooked that he ran from them. And he was telling me they were looking for him too, you know, and then he did. He disappeared. What they're doing with these shows, like, is like when they got a prodigy like this, they don't want to shut their mind off completely, because these prodigies and these scientists, you know, have to have some real scientists in with the Morgan Freeman scientists, because they need them for themselves. A great example of it is David Lynch's stuff. He did the Dune. They credit him heavily with or is influenced heavily on what we're going to cover now, which is the Silent Hill games and movies. That will be part 4.
So, Jack, do you believe that they actually have been able to penetrate other dimensions?
Oh yeah. I think they go back and forth. Yeah, I think we have a secret space program. It's just not that they don't blast shit off. I think all those ships they see and people see these things. That's just things re-entering and entering out of portals and stuff, and they're catching glimpses of these things, you know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty convinced that these are all human. So I'm sorry, Space Brother friends, but I don't think they're all Space Brothers. I think we're talking about humans. Like, watch Dune, you know, David Lynch's Dune. Even the monster thing that can alter space time with its mind is a human. You know, it's just been mutated from drugs and whatever they were doing, the spice.
So what do you think that they did, Jack, that has created this situation today where we mentioned earlier in the show, and you and I mentioned talk about this offline a lot, where they have significantly altered the reality?
I told you before, I think we may be doing it too, you know. We collapsed the wave function. There's an amount of us that are loose right now that have just as much control over reality as they do with their best machines. Well, some Russians have told me 140-something MK Ultra experiments gone horribly wrong. You know, that's what a Russian told me. Very highly placed Russian, so.
One of your contacts?
Yes, yeah.
So went very wrong. Meaning, what does that mean? What is really wrong?
No, take it for what it's worth.
Okay.
Yeah, it always stuck in my mind, but going horribly wrong. But he was like mocking the government, the American government, when he was saying it.
So he said that. You said, well, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what are they doing? In the previous show, we talked about the frequency domains, time frequency, and what was the other?
Right.
There's a frequency domain, there's a time domain, right?
And there's magnetic domains too. Yeah. And those were discovered by Parkinson, the guy who made the oscillator. Like I said, all of the science is traced to our Black Sun Rising series. I mean, we've documented it all. I've put over pages and pages of scientific documents. I got communications that from the NSA to the German BSD or whatever, that hundreds of pages of that after the war, and We're going to have diagrams that we'll be releasing when we do the Norse that I think are going to shock people. That's some of the stuff that the Anarby had. I mean, the Russians have released some of it. You know?
Yeah.
Rage has a lot of stuff, but he has a lot of stuff we haven't used yet.
Rage is your partner, your writing partner?
Yes.
Yeah. So the reality that we're in, when do you think this switch took place?
During World War II, or during the Phoenix Project, which was being run by von Neumann.
And what was the Phoenix Project about?
In actuality, things take place in hundreds of different ways, hundreds of different realities. And those realities can blend into each other. And I think Preston Nichols was probably Hugh Everett III. He wrote the Montauk Projects. I don't see how any writer could have wrote that anyway.
Well, Hugh Everett III was von Neumann's successor,
he was
right?
his successor, right. He was his successor. He wrote about the universal wave function and how it doesn't collapse. And the Copenhagen school had epileptic seizures over that. He proved it all. And then he just went deep black, and he worked for the government. And the same year von Neumann died, I think it was 57. And he became his successor. And everything he did after that was basically, I think there's a couple of mathematical equations that he gave up, but everything he did after that was classified. And when he was older, in his 50s, he wasn't really old, he just started eating and drinking and smoking, horribly overweight, and drunk all the time, I guess, smoking cigarettes, and he died at 51 or 52. And he had told everybody that, he was done. He was done with this lifetime. Kind of funny that Preston Nichols is morbidly obese, too, and the fact that what he's writing about, the wavelets, or he calls them wavelets, wavicles he calls them, that kind of science, I don't think that was readily available in 1992 when he wrote the Montauk Projects. Then you have the other thing with the Vienna people and the Vril girls, which we're also into deeply with this Peter Pan meets Pyramid Head thing.
Like Maria Orsic?
Yes, Maria Orsic, right. Old friend of mine, yes. Good friend of mine. In any case, but yeah. But in any case, they said that they'd be back in 1992, 93, and 2000. They gave dates 2003, 2004. They coincide pretty well with the Montauk Projects trilogy by Preston Nichols, and then the Silent Hill games and movies.
That's where you got Pyramid Head from, right? The Silent Hill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pyramid Head is like he turns the wheel of darkness. He's like the center of the darkness, the executioner. The darkness revolves around him. That's why he has a pyramid for a head. He's the faceless monster that pursues us in our nightmares, which may actually be our own memories, because that's what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be us. That's where you go into all these different realities blending in together.
So you're saying these realities are blended together. In other words, they're overlapping.
Right. That's what we're really looking at,
So it never used to do that, and
I think,
is that what you're saying?
We unleashed a lot of it with the 60s with LSD. What do you think? We documented they brought over millions and millions of hits from Sandorf's lab. But we got documentation of it, and the McCulture thing. They brought it through Canada. They dumped that shit in the water supply, man. People have been tripping for years, The CIA, they're the merry pranksters, That was just a joke with the other guy, Easy and them. The CIA was they were dosing each other. Then they were sitting there writing, one guy go in a room, the other guy write about the other guy. He just dosed with the ass. He didn't even tell him. But they had guys running down the D.C. streets naked and shit, thinking there was monsters after them. These were all intelligence agents.
They put it out into the public, especially the youth, with the Summer of Love in 1967. Right. The CIA was behind that.
Yeah, you have to understand it. They had the Vatican's been using all this stuff since the 13th century. I know they were using the Serratia marcescens, the bacteria. We've documented that. Another thing, some of my Russian friends have told me is, there's a book, St. Peter's Snow. It came out in 1933 or 1935. It's a Russian book. It talks about the ergot fungus and stuff. So LSD wasn't invented by the Sandoz lab in 1947 because they knew about it in the early 30s, It's just another thing. Everything everybody believes they think they know, and you see all these know-it-alls on the internet. It's not what you think it is, dude.
What do you think about CERN?
I think CERN is done now. I think CERN is done. I think they failed in their mission. I heard there was a fire there and stuff. And I noticed there were certain people who were on my Facebook page. They packed up their stuff. They were packed up. And I'm hearing it from other people too.
Well, what was CERN supposed to do?
They were supposed to open a portal. You know, they were supposed to artificially open a portal, I guess. That's what I think, you know. That's conjecture, by the way. No, they were trying to open up a portal or a black hole. And of course you can't do that because these things are intimately linked with the human soul.
So how are they, though? How are they manipulating the reality so that they can tap into alternate dimensions or realities and have that overlap?
Through Fourier windows, Gabor windows, the mathematics is all in Fourier analysis. It's a science that was developed originally, I think it was something to do with bacteria in France in the late 19th century. But the Germans took it and ran with it, and they made it into where you can actually reproduce an image from a frequency. The Bohr, actually, the math he came out with is probably just the tip of the iceberg.
For them to pursue this is my thinking, right? So for them to pursue that type of science and the subsequent technologies, Jack, even back then, says that they had to know way before that what it is that they had to look for in order to do the things that they were going to set out to do.
Right. They're in contact with disembodied entities. I mean, I got news for people. It's probably the Council of Minds the one who's probably running the world right now. If they have bodies, the bodies are just ones they're inhabiting right now. But,
so the Council of Nine, who were the Council of Nine?
I go through all that, and actually it's the nine ancient gods. They say they're the nine ancient gods of On or Heliopolis. On means heaven. I say they're the nine lords of the night of the Mayans, you know. But in any case, they made contact. That's what Hertog's book is about. We're going to get into the genetics, too. And you ask how they open portals. There's a transition that takes place between DNA, you know. It goes to something called zDNA. It's like almost like a virtual particle. Instead of a right-hand twist, I think it becomes a left-hand twist on the DNA. It actually flips over, changes its twist, and there you go with your mirror image right there. And with that, I believe the portals can be opened up by human beings. That's the secret of this whole thing. I believe reality becomes pliable in a state of zDNA when your body's producing that, and it's usually produced through excited states. That's why you have sexual magic and orgone energy and all that other stuff, and that's why you have also human sacrifice and pain, because fear is another thing that would stimulate the production of this zDNA.
So what do you think they're trying to accomplish then? I mean, I know this is conjecture also.
They control reality. And so what they're accomplishing is they control reality like a kid plays a Sims game, you know?
Yeah, okay.
This is their little freaking, this is their own Sims game, you know? What are they really trying to accomplish? Isn't it boring?
So basically, they get their rocks off, essentially continuing to experiment.
Yeah, of course. They get their rocks off by being in control. I don't know whether these entities, I know that they form people for disembodied entities that feed off these emotions, like I was saying with the zDNA. It's like an energy. They call it whoosh, but it's an energy that's produced, and it's interdimensional. It's probably what the sun is just a transformer too. I mean, Eric Dollar talks a lot about that.
Yeah.
You know, where it's taking energy from another dimension and translating it to us, you know. It's another day you have with the translation again, from the implicate order to the explicate order.
Well, that would explain the aerosol spraying to a certain degree, right?
Right, it would give them better control. It also explains the cell towers too, Michael. Because they don't need these cell towers for mind control. That don't cut it for me, you know, mind control. You got TV for that, you know. Really.
Yeah, so they're just interfering with the frequencies. the patterns.
Yeah, they're regulating them. They're regulating the Schumann resonance. This all pivots off the Schumann resonance. But this is what Preston Nichols was talking about our existence is tied to a timeline. That our essence, the essence of us, is tied to a timeline. And by manipulating that, they can manipulate the essence of where we are, you know? That's what I'm saying. This is not really what we are. We may have other bodies, or we may just be in some kind of crazy electrical charge, you know?
So they can manipulate this reality.
Right.
And, you know, we have to grunt through it.
No, but they're having problems now, like I said. They're losing control. And they're losing control of their own children, too.
How are they losing control?
Because the younger ones are revolting against us, too. That's where your stuff comes in, with the flat earth, with the Crow 777, you know. These people, what do you think you're dealing with? You're dealing with NSA agents and NASA agents, disgruntled employees, you know, but they're still in the beans, you know?
Yeah.
And they have been. They have been for a couple of years now. I think that 2012 was it was on. That's 2012. You know, if you really, maybe we all really did die in 2012.
I sent you that video, right? I said, what if we're all dead and we're in some kind of purgatory?
That's what Silent Hill is about. We're going to get into that. Don't worry. That's what Silent Hill is about.
Oh, if it's purgatory, it sucks, man. I've got
Well, Silent Hill really sucked, too. You had Pyramid Head. He would fillet you alive if you got caught outside the church, you know.
Now, you mentioned Preston Nichols, and a lot of people have heard Preston Nichols' name and with the Montauk Project, but you actually knew him. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got to meet Preston Nichols?
I met him, actually, the first time I seen him was when I was doing security in some strip clubs. You won't forget a guy like that. He just walked in with this other skinny guy, and the way he dressed, he used to dress like a very nerdy dresser, and he was like freaking comically overweight, you know. And then he'd wear pants that would show, you know, like where you actually have the biggest stomach downstairs and you do upstairs, you know, like two stomachs. So he'd wear the belt tight enough so he'd have the two stomachs. And the high water pants. I don't know if he had the protractor, but and he talked in like a high pitched voice too, like it was almost like a nerdy voice too.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, there was something about him too that you would just like talk, you just stopped, you know, like inexplicable when you're looking at what he is. Why does he have this effect on people? You know.
Yeah. So when he spoke, you listened.
Yeah, you just stopped. And it was like ingrained in your head too, you know. And that's another thing. Like people say, well, how do they do this without nobody spills the beans and stuff? Like I said, these realities, they bleed into each other, and they're very. They can manipulate them. They're malleable. Through Fourier analysis, they can change things. This is a transmission. They can tweak it as they go along. And what we remember happened, and this is what happens with people, is like with the Mandela, it's not the same as what we remembered it was, because it's constantly being tweaked. Things are being added and subtracted, you know?
Yeah, well, some people don't believe the Mandela effect is real.
Yeah, well, they're morons, like I said. You know, okay, yeah, well, all of that stuff is like documented. It's documented in songs too from 1994, like Black Hole Sun, and you know the guy starts turning into a clown and everybody is sucked to a black hole. By the way, they told me that guy killed himself too. These guys always kill themselves, by the way, because it's not because there's anything sinister about it. It's because they probably didn't want to be here in the first place and they had a mission they wanted to accomplish, and they couldn't wait to get out of here when they were done. You know, they feel. That's why they end up dying early. They predicted this. A lot of the songs, I see what they did. You know, like I said, you can go look at Black Hole Sun. You can see, like we're talking about the girls now, the Iliatu, the Jinn, that's what the Arabics call them.
Oh, the Jinn, yeah, the Jinn.
Everlasting, Santana. Well, Santana, he knew a hell of a lot, but what is it, Shine a Light On, or what is the name of that? You know music better than I do.
Yeah, I think it's a song, yeah.
Yeah, you go look at the video. He gives a shout out to the Jinn. He says they're God, you know, these female entities that we're talking about now that have been with us since the beginning of time.
Yeah, Santana, Shine Your Light.
Shine Your Light, yeah. people don't know what he's talking about, but what he's saying is Aramaic, and he's saying that these women are God. That's what I've tried to tell people. They're the ones who wrote the Quran. At one time, Arabia and Algeria were ruled by these women, and that they are the jinn. That they're called the jinn now, and that's why your Quran is green. That's why it's Venus and the moon are sacred in it. That's why it's 114 surahs, just like 114 verses from the Gospel of Thomas. They wrote it, then it was taken by these ruling imams, and all this just changed to just like, it's now become a field manual for primitive savagery. There's nothing left of what it originally was. Nothing. As a matter of fact, women are horribly mistreated in Islam. I don't know many Islamic men that shouldn't be ashamed of themselves for the way they treat women.
Now, with going back to Preston Nichols for a second, his work with regard to time travel and stuff like that, was that actually going on? Was that just hyperbole, something that he was putting out there as a distraction?
Yes and yes.
So what was Preston Nichols involved in?
He worked for the Brookhaven Lab. I knew that before I really got to know him, and which is why I avoided him for the first year I knew him,
And the Brookhaven Lab, folks, is on Long Island, and it's underground, Jack, most of it, or do we know that?
We can't document it to have it underground. The AEC didn't even really exist when they went down there, but after Patton, and that's probably why he got killed, to shut his mouth about what they found underneath Ordorf, which you can read about in the Chronicles of Akacor, made available by Nexus in 2011. In any case, you can read about that. But the AEC went down there. Those are the original scientists who went down there, and they were led by von Neumann even then. They examined stuff. Unknown equipment was taken out of there. It was like a catacomb with 12 spiraling like spokes. It's described.
This was in Germany?
Yes, Ordorf, Thuringia. When Patton overran Ordorf, they went down there. They have accounts of this, all right? Because the guy wrote a book. Is the main guy for his intelligence services, and that's available. But he didn't really get to examine it. Who examined it was this group of scientists. They blew it up. I guess they were members of the OSS, it seems to be, or which would become the CIA. They took stuff out of there, and then they blew up the entrances, and then they made the National Security Act, and they made it illegal to reveal anything that was learned about that place for 100 years.
Didn't they seal it up?
Yeah, they sealed it up. And then they became the AEC. They were given Camp Upton over on Long Island, and they went over there and they built the Brookhaven Lab, which has a couple of, well, admittedly, a couple of particle reactors, but probably a lot more than that underneath that place, yeah. It's my suspicion. Well, it should be pretty well founded by what we've written about with the Tot Foundation and the UMVs, and what other people have written about the UMVs too, that these things exist, and that they came over here and started building them beneath Camp Upton in the Brookhaven Lab. And who knows how far that extends on Long Island,
So do you know or have an idea what Preston Nichols was working on or involved in at Brookhaven Labs?
When I went up there and I seen them, they were giving out tests. Where I lived, my ex-wife, she went up there with a bunch of her friends, and they were getting $50 a visit. It would be like an hour. They'd go up to a hotel, I think it was Best Western at the time, over on North Ocean Avenue and Long Island Expressway. And they'd go in the auditorium, and they would be played certain music, and I think it was shown video clips and stuff. And they would respond by they were given the buttons to press whether they liked it or not. Primitive responses, like, not like, stuff like that. I never looked into it because but one day she was a little late, and it's only 5 minutes away, so I took a ride down there. I went down there, and the guy giving the test is Preston Nichols. I didn't say anything to him because there was like 3 or 4 other people up there with him. I left, and then I asked him, I seen him a couple of days later at this place called Health, and he's like, that's why I wrote the books. People are always saying they see me in places, and, I don't remember. We live in alternate realities, and it was a spiel there. And, even though it was happening to me at the time, I turned him off because I don't like when people lie to me, and I knew he was lying, And the stuff he was saying then, That stuff was so off the wall, man. Even in the science that he deals with in the Montauk projects, the wavicles and the frequencies. That, like I said, the only part of it that seemed plausible to me when I first read it was the part about Einstein being in charge of which he got rid of right away. That was like a red herring he had to throw in. But that was the only part that seemed plausible to me, with Einstein's Philadelphia experiments. That's a red herring they threw in.
So the Philadelphia experiment didn't happen? Is that?
I doubt it. No, there's no evidence for that.
I'm trying to figure out, in your opinion, was Preston Nichols legitimate, or was he bullshit, or was he both?
It was both. It was both.
Okay. All right.
That's the same thing. All of this is both. That nobody's come out and spelled anything. For the people it matters to, they're giving you enough clues to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Like this is it's almost like that's why game comes into this with the Silent Hill thing. It's almost like the gamers have a one leg up. We're playing a game right now. You're in an alternate reality, and it's your mind that's inventing this reality, and you're trapped in it. But these gamers that are playing these games got one leg up on us because they understand how this works.
Right.
We don't, And anybody who believes in rationalism, Michael, they're dumb, But scientism, or scientism, if you want to call it that. As far as Einstein science, where you throw out the ether, that's just nonsense. There's no explanation for the basic quantum entanglement. Don't explain anything. They're based on thermodynamics. So what are you talking about? You're talking about thermodynamics is how a steamship works, man. This is how far we've advanced. We're still using the law of steamships. Yeah, that's what thermodynamics means. Yeah, the law of steamships. This is how stupid people are. You don't see the wires hanging down in the middle of the street, the potholes. This is a disposable reality, disposable civilization, disposable electric sparks or souls or whatever they are. This reality is, they're going to get rid of it. We've got an out-of-control AI problem, so we didn't get into that.
Well, what do you think it means from a soul perspective? Are souls trapped here? Or, you and I, as an example, and others who are doing this
work. Yeah, it seems like we're trapped here, just like in the game. You got to get out, man. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find our way out of this freaking hell, Michael. But the first part of getting out of here is recognizing that we have to, Reality manifests in a lot of different ways. You're dealing with an implicate order expressing itself as an explicate order. It unravels in a lot of different ways. And that's probably one of the way in which it is unfurling. It's a reality which is explains some of this. The other one is that I think one of my readers is brilliantly, Jonathan Glassell, I left him in a comment on one of the blogs, how we project this, and we're projecting a lot of these people. We're responsible for them. We made them. This is the 55 Club. When they came out with that, we're all in our 50s.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because a lot of people that I know that are really pushing the envelope and trying to unravel this mess and to expose it, they are in their 50s.
Yeah, like players in the game that reached a certain point in the game where they got to start changing the rules now. We went to the highest level now. They have levels in games, you compete on the first level and then you go to the highest.
Yeah.
There's a group of us who have upped our game to the highest level. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just like a game. Again, it's working like a game.
Was it you and I that were talking about? I think it was you and I. We said that we had found that many people who have awakened to this reality, that awakening took place around 2005-06, around that time frame.
2006, right. There's a marker there somewhere.
That was mine. Mine was 2006.
Everybody, so Michael. Everybody.
Yeah.
I was probably when I read that book too, had to be 2006. You were being lied to, I never even thought about that shit before that. And when I'd been taking up those books, I'd taken up another book about how, Osama bin Laden, the whole bin Laden family, were all CIA ops. And it was a French book, too, translated into English. And somehow when I returned it to the library, they said I never returned it. And they still, to this day, it's a public record, municipal record, that I didn't return that book. It was $20 that I owe them for that book. But I had read about all that stuff then, and I never really thought about it. I still didn't really, I dismissed it, because I had never thought the government was bad, man.
Well, I believed the 9/11 fairy tale when it happened.
That's what I'm saying. I believed it right up to 2000.
Yeah.
And really, when I saw, I got an associate's in architectural drafting and engineering. I know how absurd the story is. I was being taught by all architects and engineers, and I was asked, see, they won't come right out and tell you that the stories, but they'll tell you what to read, or they'll make a smart ass quip like 116 fire. There were 115, those 116 skyscrapers fires, and you can go online and look at the pictures, like raging fires, like nothing like the World Trade Center. Just a couple of
Right.
Nothing ever collapsed, I think the one case where one did collapse into an earthquake or something, they don't fall straight down. They fall sideways like you would expect them to fall,
Right.
Go look at the pictures of a controlled demolition. It's unbelievable that anybody can believe it's anything otherwise.
Even when you show them that,
right,
it doesn't register.
It don't register.
Well, with that, Jack, I think what we'll do is we'll wrap it up. It was a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground. So we'll talk soon, and I'll get the show out as soon as I can.
All right, Michael.
Okay.
Thanks for everything.
All right.
Bye.
And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.